Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Mello signing in, and I'm with Baara B. What's up, bro?
What's up, Mello? What's good?
Yo, and we're about to be chatting it up. We're about to be talking about that Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 6. It has finally dropped, and this is Peak Fiction's review of it. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, like the content, hit that bell icon so that you won't miss out on Peak content. We appreciate the support as always. So getting into this chapter, we got some major fights, some interesting reveals, and of course more character development. One of the things that I did want to ask you, Bar, was what did you think about the chapter in general, right? Maybe a rating or just overall thoughts.
If I rated it out of 10, I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. I thought this right here was a really solid chapter. In fact, I thought it was like an above average chapter, to be honest. It essentially covered multiple different things. One of the things that a lot of people want to see is plot. Shikamaru, in the beginning of this chapter, he basically started off with a bunch of plot, talking to elders and basically talking about Boruto. Not only that, we got to see exactly how they felt about Boruto, how Shikamaru felt about Boruto, and also other Kages, how they felt about Boruto. And to be honest, I thought that right there was definitely necessary. Now, not only that, the action as well. Mitsuki versus Boruto. Incredible action. I kind of thought that right there was extremely needed for a couple of reasons. Mitsuki is like one of those characters that you don't really know if he's going to be like too involved, but also you want him to kind of be involved. But also with Boruto, we didn't really get to see too much of his actual combat action, and with the fight with Mitsuki, we don't necessarily expect to see too much. But in this particular chapter, we did kind of see exactly how Boruto reacts to a character like Mitsuki, like attacking him speed wise. Like, is Mitsuki up their speed? We didn't really see anything in regards to Mitsuki actually attacking Boruto, Mitsuki actually being able to hit Boruto. But things like that, I think is going to be very important to see exactly how big the power gap is between a character like Boruto and Mitsuki. So overall, I think this chapter was above average. I give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay, I think I agree somewhat. I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. That's not to say that the chapter itself is perfect, but just on my rating, I kind of look at, okay, when I look at this chapter, when I read it, did I get entertained? Was I like going crazy? And I think I got all of that. Aside from like how I personally feel, there are some things that I do think they did well objectively. I think them finally incorporating a fan favorite like Mitsuki into the actual series proper. Finally, at long last, it's been years and we finally got this man, and not only do we get Mitsuki, we get him in sage mode and we get him doing something epic. And this is just the beginning of an amazing fight going into chapter 7, but that's a video for another day. I'm also really liking, to a certain degree, and this is surprising to me, this kind of romantic dynamic between Sarada and Boruto. Now, I'm not one for shipping personally, but I do like the idea of them right now at their current age because it feels natural. It feels like this is where it should be rather than when they were 12. I do like this idea of them starting to get together now, as long as it doesn't negatively affect Sarada as a character. Maybe she can fight alongside Boruto, or he can aid her in her power growth and progression. But either way, I think it's super interesting. And I do want to say for Shikamaru, where he's having the conversation and we learn that he's not the 8th Hokage, he's like the interim Hokage, and I rock with that heavy because I think it shows some kind of reverence or respect for his friend that's gone from his perspective, that being Naruto Uzumaki. And like you said, the world building to where we learn about how the other villages, the feudal lords, the daimyo, how they feel about Konoha and its current predicament, right? So that's pretty good. And another thing that I really liked about Shikamaru Nara was the fact that he's going to be making moves in the light, right? Shikamaru is going to be like the Hokage doing things. He's going to be playing into the hands of the daimyo, of the feudal lords. But at the same time, in the shadows, which is no pun intended, he's going to be making moves. And I think that is really cool because it kind of speaks to his intelligence, but also his willingness to kind of abandon convention and the status quo in service of what he actually believes in. So he's also very smart, but also morally and ethically sound as well. And I think this is going to rope in Amato. And of course, I think we're going to get some interesting dynamics between Kawaki and the big lie that he told, which Damon alluded to in this chapter. And of course, everyone else in Konoha who's been buying into what was said. I want to see those dynamics as well. And lastly, I think for Mitsuki, there are some things in the actual chapter that kind of allude to him knowing about Boruto's situation. The snake, for instance, through its tongue can smell scents. And we know in the Mujina Bandits arc, that particular snake, I don't know if it's that one, but he trained one of his snakes to remember the scents of his friend or friends, and that's how he found Boruto to begin with. So I do think there is an objective truth there that could play a role. Could, maybe not, we'll have to see. And then also the fact that Mitsuki was guarding after, or rather guarding over Kawaki and Ada, and I think he would have been in ear's range to hear the very outward conversation that they were having about the big lie and Naruto being alive and Kawaki X, Y, and Z. So all of this stuff kind of culminates together for me to create an epic chapter that I was looking forward to. That being characters like a Mitsuki, and of course this like romantic Saruto-esque dynamic that I think a lot of other people really enjoy. So yeah, I give it a 10 out of 10 for sure.
Yeah, 1000%. One of the things that you kind of said a bit earlier that I definitely wanted to piggyback off of was the Mitsuki dynamic. I mean, one of the things that I did kind of find interesting was the fact that he completely put Kawaki out. Now I understand he did give a decent reason as to why he needed to kind of put Kawaki out, because he would kind of be like, he'd be sensed by Boruto. Mitsuki kind of said "or" in this chapter, so I guess that's like the official word for whatever they're sensing with each other. But in my personal opinion, I think it's definitely a possibility that Kawaki has some sort of other motives other than just flat out killing Boruto. He basically talked about how maybe he wants to see something for himself. Whatever he wants to see might be in like direct contrast to what Kawaki's best interest. So because of that, I thought that Mitsuki putting Kawaki like flat out, like not giving him any warning, no communication, no nothing, I think that right there is definitely interesting. And also I do want to see exactly how long Kawaki is going to be out for, because I do understand that there's like different time frames of how long the venom would put somebody out. So I do want to see exactly how that plays out in the next chapter. But that's something I want to keep my eye on.
Yeah, I think that part is super interesting too, because I believe that they wanted to get away from like the giant bombastic battles and big energy beams like a Dragon Ball from the days of Shippuden, and kind of like bring it back down to earth. Or maybe I'm getting that mixed up, vice versa, but I do like the idea in general of it being more strategic, this battle between Mitsuki and Boruto, because I think there is a clear favorite, obviously, because Boruto and Two Blue Vortex has been an absolute menace to society. I do think we all expect him to I won't say completely destroy Mitsuki, but pretty much destroy Mitsuki for the most part. I'm holding hope that Mitsuki is going to show up, show out, and do something amazing. But I do like this idea. Maybe Kishimoto is like setting up this idea in our minds that, hey, an Otsutsuki can be knocked out by some means. It's just a matter of timing and strategy, and maybe that'll play a role in the actual battle. I'm one of the few people who think that Mitsuki has actually been setting things up pretty well from the word go, right? He comes in and he strategically wraps Boruto up and then sends his snake out to bite Boruto, right? So that could be to incapacitate Boruto, or the snake could have some venom to kill Boruto. It just depends on where you're leaning. And then he follows that up by attacking at a long range, right? At a distance, not getting too close to a Boruto. And I think everything that he didn't move from that one spot the entire time. I went back and checked. Everything that he did, I think, was strategic, and it served the purpose of really getting the measure of this Otsutsuki that 3 years prior he stated he wanted to rival, the mighty Otsutsuki. And he's been waiting for this moment, so I think he's going to have some kind of strategy in mind. And lastly, I think his opener when he wrapped Boruto up is when that small snake got inserted into his clothing, right? To me, that's the only time that it could have happened. It's the only time that he was close enough to do that. That tells me that Mitsuki had anticipated, or maybe even set up, the possibility that Boruto would leave that area, get away from Asarada, Sumire, and Konoha at large. So Mitsuki could be orchestrating things to fight him at full power outside of the village, or potentially anticipated that Boruto would try to escape. But either way, it seems like in the midst of that initial battle, he had already set up plans and tactics and strategies in case Boruto kind of scurried off, which kind of speaks to how far he is in terms of like this 5D chess playing move that he's doing, right? The board is set, and I think he's a few steps ahead of Boruto. But yeah.
No, 1000%. To piggyback off of that, I mean, at the very beginning, I kind of brought this up a bit earlier, how Mitsuki essentially put Kawaki out, the Hokage, the 8th Hokage, Shikamaru, he didn't even know that was Mitsuki's plan. So Mitsuki, for him, like as you were saying, this right here seems incredibly planned out, incredibly calculated. Mitsuki himself came up with his own plan that already started like without the Hokage's knowledge. So yeah, 1000%, he had this all premeditated.
Yeah, bro, it's cooking. And I'm also really curious, like this fight, as we get into like chapter 7, maybe a few, you know, predictions or maybe spoilers for the next chapter to come. Do you actually see Mitsuki losing in this fight? Or do you see maybe 3 possibilities I'll pose, right? Mitsuki loses in this fight. Mitsuki finds out some kind of semblance of the truth, right? That he is actually Boruto Uzumaki. That's his son, S-U-N. Or maybe a third option, the divine trees interrupt the battle and they have to kind of join forces, right? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. How do you see this fight in particular in chapter 7 maybe going?
It's interesting because I think it's possible that all of the above can possibly happen. I think Mitsuki, we all understand, he's not going to be as strong as Boruto is as of right now, and nor should we really be expecting him to be that strong. So in an actual flat-out battle, I'd assume that he's probably going to lose. Now, I think the question is, will there be an actual fully drawn-out battle? And I think from what we're going to see, it's going to be a possibility that Mitsuki loses that little kerfuffle or a little skirmish or whatever they have. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be like a full drawn-out battle like how we've seen some of the full entire battles in Naruto and Boruto, like Momoshiki versus Naruto and Sasuke, or even Jigen versus Naruto and Sasuke, like how those are like fully drawn-out battles. I don't necessarily expect that, but I expect Boruto to make it clear that there's levels to this, and Mitsuki is probably going to show like he can do at least something. One of the things that Boruto said in the last chapter that was interesting, this was like one of the last things, he says he's going to have to rough up Mitsuki a little bit. I forgot specifically what he said, but he basically made it clear that he's going to actually try to hurt Mitsuki a little bit, not necessarily kill him or anything like that. So it's not going to be Boruto bloodlusted, it might be Mitsuki bloodlusted versus Boruto bloodlusted, but either way, because of that, I do expect to see Boruto like actually rough up Mitsuki a little bit, but it won't necessarily be like a full thing. I think at max it'll probably be like the actual full battle at max 10 pages, 10 pages out of the 40-page chapter, so at max. But I can see a way that Mitsuki finds out the truth. One of the things that you basically told me on the podcast, and this right here, I had me thinking a lot over the past couple of days, was his Boruto's sense. If Mitsuki himself can actually interpret that as the actual Boruto sense, then I think 1000% he's one of those characters similar to like Amato that takes physical evidence. In my personal opinion, that we haven't necessarily seen this in the series yet, but I personally do think that he would actually take that specific physical evidence, or he'd value that more than his own memories, because one of the things that we do understand from Mitsuki is that his memories in itself isn't necessarily fully trustworthy. We've seen Mitsuki swap out his memories multiple times in the series, so I think that right there is going to be a thing for Mitsuki. So it's possible that he does find out the truth. Now the divine tree thing's similar as well. We understand that Boruto isn't necessarily like, let's say, the biggest target. I think with some of the big targets right now in the plot lines that we're looking forward to see is probably going to be Sarada versus Hidari, Jura versus Naruto. Like those are the big ones, Ada versus Bug. But I think regardless, one of the things that we do anticipate is that these things are going to be not only in the series a lot, but also have contact with Boruto as well. And I personally do believe if there's a situation where the battle has to be ended a tad bit earlier, 2 possibilities: either the divine trees get involved or either Kawaki gets involved. I talked about how Kawaki a little bit earlier, we don't necessarily know exactly how long the venom is going to last on Kawaki. It's also possible that Kawaki's like Otsutsuki DNA or whatever he has like mixed with Ishiki, like, or he possibly just heals himself extremely faster than what the venom is anticipated for to knock him out for. So it's possible that Kawaki interrupts. But I think all the above could definitely be possible. But I think if I pick one of the possibilities, I think Mitsuki flat out loses. I think one of the things that Boruto is doing right now is that he wants to be in communication with Shikamaru. I think that right there is going to be extremely valuable to Mitsuki. So because of that, he probably wants to end the battle extremely quickly and get back to Shikamaru. But if they're kind of like interrupted by either the truth or like Kawaki or a divine tree or a Shinju, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised at all. But I think more realistically, he's probably going to lose.
Now, I really don't want the dude to lose like that, but it's definitely, I mean, Boruto's a world beater right now, so we'll have to see. But I do want to ask you, in going into chapter 7, is there something that you would want to see specifically out of this Mitsuki versus Boruto battle, right? Like, I'll give you an example, like one thing that I would love to see. I would love to see maybe like a giant summoning battle right? Like a kaiju-sized battle to where like maybe Mitsuki summons a giant snake and maybe Boruto summons a Garaga, right? A giant snake too. That could be pretty sick with like the scar on the face. That'd be like kind of cool. I'm not gonna hold you. Or maybe a toad, maybe a giant toad, and we can get like this kind of pseudo, I would say Sanin battle, like Orochimaru versus Jiraiya, but different, obviously. Or like maybe a sword fight, right? Mitsuki was rocking the sword before he came to Konoha, and of course Orochimaru knows about sword play. He trains Sasuke trains Boruto, so it all comes like from the same umbrella of like student master dynamic.
That's interesting. I mean, Garaga would definitely be a really, really good character. One of the things that I talked about with Garaga is that he had the scar on his eye similar to Boruto, and that would be like a really, really good aesthetic thing post time skip. It's post time skip, so hopefully we do get to see Garaga in a battle like this versus someone using Snake Sage or even Dragon Sage, it definitely would be like helpful. But the thing that I'm afraid of is that it won't necessarily be too much of a battle simply because Boruto is that strong and all he's going to really need to use is taijutsu and possibly a little bit of flying Raijin. I think the snake is definitely good. Sage mode, in my personal opinion, because we did see Kashin Koji a lot earlier, and because we do understand that Kashin Koji has Sage mode as well, I'm hoping that Boruto also has that. And we kind of talked about this a bit earlier as well, or a couple of days ago. If Boruto were to use Karmasu or Sage mode first, which one would he use? I mean, if we're just going headcanon and off of faith, I mean, I'm hoping Sage mode would kind of be it, and this would kind of be a good battle to show it because his opponent is also using Sage mode. So the main thing I'd want to see, to be honest, is Mitsuki being stronger than Boruto. And I understand that's probably not going to happen.
Okay.
But if Mitsuki hypothetically was stronger than Boruto, I won't say it changes the entire complexion of the series, but it adds a completely other element that we haven't necessarily seen before. And now we have to question, is Mitsuki stronger than Kawaki as well? How good is Kawaki? Is Mitsuki stronger than Code? But also, his influence on the series becomes exponentially bigger. And not only that, we also talked about how believable it could possibly be because he's one of the only synthetic human beings that we have in the Z Fighters, the good guys. And he could possibly be loaded with a bunch of other scientific technology. It could be possibly be loaded with a whole bunch of other Kege Genkais and dojutsu and stuff like that. So him potentially being stronger than Boruto would be like a huge plot twist. It would be like a huge thing that no one really seen coming. I think that right there would definitely be like a very good element that's added to the series, but it's likely not going to happen.
One thing that I was thinking of is if these divine trees are going to be like Jigen plus, right? Like because of Ada in this chapter saying that they were like out of Code's league, who we do know Unlimited Code is stronger than Jigen. And of course, Boruto beat that guy, so Boruto as well, stronger than Jigen. Then I was thinking, okay, well, if these guys, right? See, but this is interesting. I don't know if she meant like they, as in like cumulatively, like all four of them equals out of his league, or just individually, but probably individually, right? So if it is the case that individually they are stronger than Jigen, how does like a Konohamaru or Sarada or, you know, an Ada, how do they like survive, right? For Ada, you can say, okay, well, Damon maybe. Okay, cool, I think that works. For Sarada, you can say, okay, well, like, she got her boyfriend, Boruto, gonna pull up. Okay, cool, right? And then Naruto's a target. Kawaki can probably defend Naruto. But who's helping Konohamaru? We got, like, New Inishikacho. We got, like, Gohan, basically Himawari. So, her hidden power. So, it's, like, really interesting. And I'm thinking, they've been playing around with scientific ninja technology, and I really want to see that make a comeback. Maybe we can like factor in Dinky for once. I don't know, bro. Like, I don't even think he's canon in the manga at this point. If he is, I don't remember. But yeah, I think he maybe showed up once or twice. But yeah, like, I think that'd be a good way to incorporate some element that they mentioned in part 1 and kind of bring it to fruition in part 2 through Konohamaru. I think could be pretty cool. But just some ideas for chapter 7. Did you have anything that you wanted to kind of bring up about chapter 7 and maybe something that you're anticipating or predicting to happen?
The only thing I'm really hoping to really see is, well, I guess Kashin Koji is always like a standing thing, and Karm Steel is always a standing thing. You could kind of include the Joken as well, but I really do want to see how Mitsuki handles Boruto, and also I do want to see how mastered, quote unquote, because that word in itself is like kind of used loosely, how well does he manipulate Sage mode? How well does he use it? Like, does he have combinations with it? Like stuff that we haven't necessarily seen before in part 1. Like, there's things specifically that Mitsuki uses in Sage mode that he doesn't necessarily or can't necessarily get to in his regular mode. So stuff like that, I just want to see the difference. And not only that, I don't necessarily want to fully get to see or fully see Mitsuki like just get destroyed. Like I think that'll probably like ruin my image of Mitsuki a tiny bit, even though we understand it's Boruto. That's like Josh Allen versus Mahomes. Like we understand like it's Mahomes. But one of the other things that I do kind of want to see, you kind of were asking how are Konohama and the other guys going to actually deal with some of these Shinju. This might be like an unpopular opinion that I have, but like I honestly do believe that a lot of these characters should not be able to deal with the Shinju. Coming off of Boruto Part 1, I think one of the worst things that we did see is that the Kado organization didn't necessarily put in that much work. When we talk about the body counts of the Akatsuki, when we talk about the body counts of like some of the other goats of Naruto Shippuden, like they are racking up hundreds or even like dozens or even like thousands of bodies. The Kado organization, they just were not necessarily like that. So I think if there were to be like characters or villains that would actually start racking up a lot of like body counts, the Shinju could definitely be like a good source. And because it is Part 2, I was going to say Boruto Shippuden, because it is Boruto TBV, I'm expecting it to be a lot darker, and I'm expecting a lot of the good guys to actually start dying. So if there were something if this thing were to go how I'd want it to go, I kind of want some of the characters to not be able to deal with the Shinju, and for us to not to necessarily look back at the Shinju and say, hey, their impact wasn't necessarily that crazy.
Yeah, I do agree that I do want the series to be a lot darker, but based upon what I've seen so far, they seem to be substituting, I'm going to say it like this, it's going to sound a little weird, but I'm going to say it like this, putting people on the shelf in substitution of dying, right? So instead of like Sasuke dying, he's on the shelf, right? He's a tree. Instead of Moege dying or Naruto dying, Naruto's sealed away. Moege is a tree as well. So I can foresee a scenario where like Bug shows up and gets dominated by Damon, right? And then Damon's like super cocky, he's super arrogant, he has like this sadistic side, he's playing with his food. And then by some means, Bug, the divine tree bug, he manages to consume Ada, right? Well, is Ada dead? Well, I would say no. I think it might be like an Android 18 situation from Dragon Ball, where Cell absorbs Android 18, and then later Android 18 is like regurgitated out of him, but she's still alive. I think that's what they'll do. So even if a Konohamaru falls in battle, I do foresee that he'll be alive at the end of the series, mostly because I think they're setting him up pretty well, and especially with Kishimoto back at the helm, I do think he's going to want to pay off that desire of wanting to become Hokage that was in Naruto Part 1. Right, this is Naruto's student, he's the Hokage's advisor, so they seem to have plans for him, and the fact that they even put him in the spotlight, right, in the crosshairs, kind of gives you an idea about the expectation for the character. But even beyond that, I just think death is not going to be a thing too much. It's just going to be getting put on a tree or something of the sort, right? So, but we'll have to see though. Maybe he dies. I don't know. It just depends on how he goes out though. But I would love to see Kakashi, Might Guy get involved. That could be pretty cool too.
Yeah, and that right there's definitely a possibility. I kind of like that specifically for Naruto and Sasuke, them not necessarily completely dying, but putting them on the shelf, because we understand that if they were in a series, they would be like such a big weight on the actual plot. But in my personal opinion, I think that that could be the situation with Konohama and everybody else that are actual targets to the Shinju. My whole thing is, I just hope we don't necessarily look back on this and it's just like, what did they really do? You see what I'm saying? If you recall, this is kind of a feeling that people had during the Pain arc when he like attacked the Hidden Leaf Village and killed a bunch of people and then just revived everybody at the end. He didn't necessarily get to revive everyone, RIPs to the good ones, but he pretty much like, or a lot of people kind of felt like it was like, I forgot the name of it, but like anticlimactic or something like that. I forgot the name of it, but like it was just like it wasn't totally fulfilling. If the Shinju actually do come around and like actually do like put people on the shelves, I think there should be like a system where not everybody that's put on the shelf is actually like released. Maybe some of them get released and some of them won't get released. I think this right here might actually be like the big thing with Sasuke. I think that honestly a lot of people are probably going to, I think that some people can possibly be released, but some people can possibly not be released. And hypothetically, if like let's say Bug attacks Ada and then they do the correct thing to like unseal Bug from whatever tree this is, maybe it's a situation where hey, maybe maybe Bug is like so weak where you can actually do that, but with Sasuke you have to kill him, and it's gonna be like an extra element to like actually unsealing him from a tree that you can't necessarily get. I think it could be like a certain situation like that where you separate the two. I just don't necessarily think it or hope it'll be a situation where either everybody dies that's been hemmed up by the Shinju, or like no one dies. I think that would be like too much of like a plain thing.
So before we wrap up this particular video, I do want to kind of play a quick little game with you, okay? I'm gonna ask you a few questions. I call it over or under. So it's gonna be over 50% or under 50%, the odds of this thing happening, okay? So for the first one, are you over 50% or under 50% Mitsuki being stronger than Six Paths Sage Mode Naruto or Sasuke?
This is a different one. All right. For the sake of this, I'm gonna say under. I'm going to say under just because I respect Naruto and Sasuke to the point where I can't necessarily just say any random Boruto characters like surpassing them now. So I'm gonna just say Sage Mode Naruto and Sasuke. Okay. Or I'd say under
50.
Under.
Okay. So you got Mitsuki getting washed next chapter. Okay.
If the shoe fits, unfortunately.
Fair enough. All right. So over 50% or under 50%. In the next, let's say 10 chapters, we're going to see a brand new Otsutsuki.
I'm going to say over, simply because it's not out of the realm of possibilities that Otsutsuki members might look at what's going on in this dimension and think either something is interesting or something is like not good. One of the things that I think is unique kind of to this level of Ten Tails is this is the first Ten Tails that we did see like have like an actual person out. I forgot specifically what name they used for it, but they have like actual, they're talking, they're sentient. And this right here is kind of like what Code is talking about. He basically said like, hey, these things are probably going to do all my work for me. Code is looking at it like that, but other Otsutsuki members out there may actually also be looking at it like this already, like this as well. One of the things that we do understand about Ten Tails is that they need to be consumed by Otsutsuki members to turn into a divine tree. These things are literally already divine trees up and walking around. So these things could definitely be advantageous to the Otsutsuki members. And if that's the case, I could definitely see them coming. Or this thing could be like completely extremely dangerous to like the fabric of multiple universes, and then they might come to like wipe them all out, or possibly even wipe out the whole entire dimension, because we have like 16 space curvatures. And that's another thing, and we talked about the 16 space curvatures prior to this time skip. There's also the two Otsutsuki stone tablets in Ishiga's dimension that we haven't necessarily seen yet come through to fruition, and these are all Easter eggs that were like put into the series. So like, if hypothetically like there was a situation where Otsutsukis do come, I wouldn't necessarily rule it out that the Boruto writers kind of blend the two arcs together, because simply the Ten Tails and the Divine Trees, they have so much to do with the Otsutsuki clan. And it would just make that much sense if you were to actually combine the two to not only world build, but possibly also make it just for a more entertaining arc.
Okay, so I have one more question for you. Over 50% or under 50% that Naruto and Sasuke will get a major power-up in the next, let's say, 12 chapters. So I think this is like a year. In the next year, over 50% or under 50%, Naruto and Sasuke will come back and they'll have a major power-up.
I'd go under. I think that it's possible that Sasuke and Naruto both get a power up, but it won't necessarily be in the next year. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff in Boruto TBV that they have to do without Naruto and Sasuke, and because of that, I think the time frame is a little bit off. So because of that, I'd say not necessarily in the next 12 years, so under. But I will say it's possible that they both get a power up if they both get like unsealed from their current like post, like wherever they at. I personally do believe one of the things that really influenced the Boruto writers to actually nerf them in the first place, and a lot of people believe that they were nerfed a lot earlier than they were. People say that they were nerfed during the Shinichia arc. I don't believe that. I think the nerfing points were when Naruto lost Karma and when Sasuke lost the Rinnegan. They had to nerf the characters at that particular point because they were the big dogs. They were getting all the big battles. They were the guys versus Ishiki Otsutsuki. They were the guys versus Momoshiki. They were the guys versus Jigen. Of course, Boruto and some of the new generation characters got into it, but we understood who the big dogs really were. So to actually put Boruto and Kawaki on that stage and let people know, hey, these are the actual killers, they had to be nerfed Naruto and Sasuke. So I feel like now that they're already established, Boruto and Kawaki, they're the killers. So they're the guys. Maybe you want to put Code in there. Some people want to X them out the series. Both answers are actually valid, in fact. But I feel like because they're that guys on the top of the series already, Naruto and Sasuke, if they get buffed, it won't necessarily impede or like threaten Kawaki and Boruto's status at the top. I should say, if they buff them correctly, it could. It's possible that they buff them to like holy heavens, and all of a sudden they're like Shibai level. Like, but I feel like if they buff them when they do come back to a level that's not necessarily threatening too much the top and upper echelon tier of the talents, like it won't necessarily be that big of a deal. And in fact, I think it's actually likely, because one of the things that we do understand about Naruto and Sasuke, when it comes to ratings, when it comes to selling t-shirts, when it comes to selling toys and action figures, those are like the pantheons. Like these are the guys. I think that's one of the big reasons why they didn't necessarily like kill them off fully. Hypothetically, if they get a power up in like the last arc, like let's say equivalent to the war arc, and they are like actually putting in work, maybe they're not actually taking out the bad guys, but they get a new form and they're actually putting in work, and they may actually even die at the end of Boruto. Either way, that's still going to be a bunch of revenue for the storyline. It's going to be a bunch of fanfare. It's going to hype up the series that much more. So I think it kind of would be like mismanagement, like to not actually have them potentially end the series at the end, but also possibly even get like a power up or a power boost. We see what Dragon Ball is pretty much doing with Goku. Like they're going back to their pick and roll, like new transformations. Same with Vegeta, new transformations. Same with Frieza, new transformations. Yeah. I won't necessarily say Naruto is going to become that or Boruto is going to become that, but it's working. Like they do it for a reason. I think Boruto could possibly do something like that with Naruto and Sasuke, like one last hooray.
Okay. I think I agree, more or less. So yeah, so we could talk about this chapter and Boruto in general forever, but maybe that's a video for another day. Listen, if you guys are in the comment section, let us know if you guys have some questions for us for video topics that we can discuss, maybe Boruto, Naruto, or any other type of anime. We're open to suggestions here at Peak Fiction. And with that being said, people, I'm your humble host, Mello.
And it's been your boy, Baara B.
And we're signing out. Again, thank you so much for the support. See you next time.